Berke now eagerly awaited the completion of his magnificent mosque. He longed to see the splendid golden-domed monument fitting for the ruler of half the world. But Kolomon showed no such urgency. Wouldn't he want to finish quickly and return home? Berke wondered. Or does he sense I'll never truly let him go, and so he drags this out, if only to remain alive a little longer? Whatever the reason, Berke needed the mosque completed regardless. Its crowning glory, like a crown atop a king's head, would be its upper dome. What would it look like? What had the renowned craftsman envisioned? All Berke knew was that the dome would be covered in pure gold, and for this purpose he had already dispatched several measures of solid gold bullion from the treasury, plundered from conquered lands. Kolomon had only said, "You'll see when it's finished." Not long after, Berke visited the construction site again. The walls had risen past waist height by now. This time he approached from a different side. Here too, chained and unchained slaves labored, shaping brick and carving stone. Berke froze, unable to tear his eyes from the wall. Countless colors, intricate Arabic script, elaborate patterns overlapping and complementing one another, drawing the eye into what felt like an endless, radiant world. The higher the wall rose, the more vibrant its decoration seemed to Berke. "Berke Khan, do you like the patterns?" said a familiar, gravelly voice beside him. It was Kolomon, his beard and hair now grown thick and unkempt. Berke startled as though waking from a trance. "I like them," he admitted, unable to hide his genuine admiration. "If you like them, all the better. We are doing what we can with what we have," Kolomon said, though Berke detected a hint of mockery in his tone. Berke gathered himself. "When will it be finished?" "By autumn," Kolomon said calmly. "Good," Berke said, and began to walk away, but after only a step or two he turned back, as though compelled to look once more. Kolomon's face went pale. Berke stepped back, then forward again, rubbing his eyes as though doubting his own sight. He looked again. He hadn't been mistaken. There, carved into the wall, was the very same beauty riding a pacing horse he'd glimpsed earlier that day. The same joyful expression, the same radiant eyes, the same horse, the same clothing. Berke shifted his position again and again. Every time he moved away from one particular spot, the image vanished, replaced by the intricate, colorful pattern he'd admired before. But whenever he returned to that exact point, the smiling woman reappeared. He recalled having heard of such wonders before, of a mosque in Iran with 7 domes, where a sound spoken directly beneath the central dome would echo faintly through each of the 6 others in turn, yet fall utterly silent if spoken from even a single step away. Returning to his own quarters, the Khan sat alone upon his golden throne for a long while. What is this cunning Roman trying to accomplish? Does he mean to mock me, to humiliate me before the entire Muslim community? And yet the mosque itself is magnificent, the artistry beyond compare. Perhaps no one else will ever stand at that precise spot. Perhaps I should have the wall recarved, redecorated. Or perhaps I should simply place something at that exact spot, so no one could ever stand there again. But who's to say this cunning craftsman hasn't hidden some other trick as well? He summoned Salamjari. "Bring me the slave craftsman Kolomon." 3 armed guards soon marched Kolomon in, his chains dragging heavily behind him. Berke dismissed the guards, remaining alone with the craftsman. "Speak," the Khan said. "About what, Berke Khan? When will the mosque be finished?" "I told you by autumn." "Very good," Berke drew the words out slowly. "Why did you carve that girl's image into the wall?" "Because I love her. And she loves me too, Berke Khan." Berke felt his fury building. "You're an infidel, do you not know she's a Muslim?" "I know," Kolomon said. "But when 2 people love one another, faith is no obstacle. The greatest religion of all is love itself." "Very good," Berke said, his face now drained of all color. Kolomon seemed dangerously close to triggering one of Berke's infamous fits. Yet the Khan restrained himself once more. "You know full well it's forbidden to depict images on the walls of a mosque. Why did you carve her likeness there regardless?" "I told you I love her. It was the only way I had to speak the truth of my heart to her. Words alone didn't reach her, or perhaps she refused to understand them out of fear." But when she saw her own image carved into that wall, she finally understood. She knew what such a thing could cost me. And she understood, too, that I valued my love for her above even my own life. That was when she agreed. She agreed, yes, to be mine forever. Kolomon suddenly dropped to one knee. I've never once humbled myself before another man in my life, Berke Khan. But for the sake of this love, I kneel before you now. I ask only this one thing: do not grant me freedom. Keep me in these chains for the rest of my days as your slave. Let me build you 1,000 mosques instead of one. Only grant me permission to be with Kundis. Berke's hand drifted toward the sword at his belt. And would the girl agree to this? She would. She would, Great Khan. She wishes for nothing else. And you'll still finish the mosque. I will, Berke Khan. A sudden, terrible joy spread across the Khan's face. He rang his silver bell at once. Salamjari entered. Kolomon and I have come to an agreement, the Khan said, his thin lips curling into something resembling a smile, though his eyes remained cold. I've agreed to give him the cook's daughter in marriage, and in exchange he'll have the mosque finished by autumn. He turned to Kolomon. Isn't that right, craftsman? That's right. The Khan's expression darkened suddenly. Now hear my judgment, he said. For carving an image upon the wall of a holy temple, he shall receive 100 lashes. For daring to seek marriage with a Muslim woman, he shall be yoked and driven like a beast of burden. Both punishments shall be carried out before the girl and all the assembled slaves. Only then, as promised, shall the girl be given to him. Kolomon cried out, "Kill me here with your own sword instead." "No," said Berke. "I still need you to finish that mosque." In the city's central square, nearly 10,000 slaves gathered, some in chains, others without. Around them stood roughly 200 armed guardsmen, swords drawn, mounted on their finest horses. The night was pitch dark, the packed crowd of slaves as grim and shadowed as the darkness itself. In one corner of the platform stood the Khan's herald. In another, 2 executioners held Kundis between them, her face pale as chalk, her eyes closed, her long hair unbound and falling like a dark cloak down her back. "Hear ye," bellowed the herald, a massive Mongol-featured man. By decree of the great and noble Berke Khan, ruler of the Golden Horde, the slave craftsman is sentenced to 100 lashes with the whip for carving an image upon the wall of a Muslim mosque. He turned to a fox-hatted guardsman standing at the center of the platform, evidently the chief executioner. "Begin." 4 executioners threw Kolomon onto the platform in an instant, positioning themselves on either side, whips raised. The fox-hatted man began counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. The slaves' faces darkened like storm clouds, their expressions locked in silent fury. Only the hiss of the whip cutting through the air could be heard. Before long, blood began dripping from the raised whip with each strike, glowing crimson in the firelight. The crowd of slaves seemed to shift forward, ever so slightly with each blow. By the time the count passed 50, "Have mercy, this is the great craftsman Kolomon, brothers." A woman's voice shrieked. It was Kundis, on the verge of losing her mind entirely. The whip's terrible hissing, like the strike of a venomous serpent, finally ceased once the 100 lashes were complete. The executioners lifted Kolomon, his back a mass of raw, bleeding flesh, and set him upright on the ground. "Hear ye," the herald's grim voice rang out again. By decree of the great and noble Berke Khan, the infidel slave Kolomon is sentenced to be yoked and driven like a beast, for the sin of seeking marriage with the Muslim Kipchak girl Kundis. At that exact moment, a commanding voice rose from among the slaves. "People, this is an outrage." The voice cried out like an alarm bell. "Let us intervene, let us not allow our friend to be humiliated this way." It was Salamjari. Instantly, the crowd erupted. "Don't touch Kolomon. Better to die than live through this. Free him." The slaves surged forward. "Fall back," the executioners shouted. "I'll cut you down." Other guardsmen threatened. But the furious mob broke through the mounted guards blocking their path and pressed forward. Let us at least die with our dignity. Voices cried out from every side. The slaves trampled through the guardsmen in their way, horses and all, and surged forward as one. The uprising lasted 3 days. That very night, Berke summoned a division of Nogai's forces stationed in Sarai-Batu. They slaughtered the rebels without mercy, half fell in the fighting itself, and the rest, wounded or captured, were driven outside the city the following day and cut down by mounted riders in broad daylight, leaving not one alive. But the rebels hadn't gone down without a fight. In the initial chaos, they'd already destroyed the 200 guardsmen surrounding them, seizing their horses and weapons. By the time Nogai's forces arrived from Sarai-Batu, many had already freed each other from their chains entirely. When the army finally arrived, every last one of them stood and fought. They tore apart the very mosque they'd been forced to build, hurling its stones and bricks at their enemies. Some of the boldest among them charged the cavalry on foot, using walls and courtyards for cover. But armed with little more than crude weapons, barely 500 men on horseback, the rest untrained slaves and craftsmen with no real combat experience, they stood no chance against a fully armored cavalry force and were ultimately defeated. And yet, even in defeat, they had shaken the very foundations of the Golden Horde. That terrifying, bloody night forced even Berke to reckon, for the first time, with what the common people were truly capable of. And the slaves and craftsmen, for their part, had learned something too, that if they ever united fully, even the seemingly invincible armies of the Golden Horde could be broken. Once the uprising was crushed, and the Khan had settled back onto his throne with a heavy sigh, he dispatched search parties to find Kolomon, alive if possible, or at minimum to bring back his head. The soldiers combed through the blood-soaked battlefield and the mountains of corpses awaiting burial, but found no trace of him. Salamjuri, too, sent to retrieve Kunduz, returned empty-handed with his men. Neither the mother nor the daughter can be found anywhere, he reported to the Khan. In truth, thanks to Salamjuri's quiet intervention, Kolomon and Kunduz, along with Kunduz's mother and roughly 20 wounded companions, had already fled through the forest, making their way toward the Don River.
If you enjoy epic historical stories of the Mongol Empire and the Golden Horde, don't forget to like,